Season 13 has really mixed up the meta, and there's been some slow changes behind the scenes that have made many different characters stronger than they've ever been before. That's why in this video, we're going to go over the top 10 Overwatch winners that you need to know so that you know how to play them or counteract them, and we're going to be giving you some tips and tricks along the way. Now, we're really close to 90,000 subscribers, so if you enjoy the content, do me a solid and press it right now, and let's get into it. Now, the first big winner we got to talk about is undoubtedly Widowmaker. Now, this character is quite a bit stronger than she has been in a long time for two core reasons. Number one, her strongest counter has been removed from the board. Sombra has received a gigantic change, and really it's a nerf to denying Widowmaker. Sombra's entire playstyle around denying a Widowmaker is far harder to do, and the character is going to have a much harder time shutting down the very long sightlines of a Widowmaker without the perma-invis allowing her to stage on the Widowmaker and attack her whenever they want. In addition to that, Widowmaker is extremely good when Orisa is being played a lot. Without tanks that counteract her or interact with her in any great way, Widowmaker starts to shine, not to mention with all these damn Junos flying around, you can dink them in the head and punish them for not using cover like a normal goddamn person. Now I'm going to give you one tip to play Widow and one tip to counteract her. For my tip with Widow, I would say that you need to be incredibly patient on that first shot, especially if enemies do not know you're on the field. Especially now with the new change where enemies don't know you're going to swap for 15 seconds after you do. That first shot before enemies know that there's a Widowmaker is one of the most important ones. And oftentimes, if you're playing a position that enemies don't know you're there, you want to plant your feet, minimize your movement, and take the most accurate shot possible before enemies know your location and maybe even know that you're on Widow in the first place. Now, my tip against Widow is that a good Widow demands respect unlike any other character. She demands to be respected, so you need to be very careful of her sightlines, and she needs to be constantly contested, meaning that you need to put pressure into her so that she doesn't get free range and line of sight on your team. And depending on the role that you're playing, you can either face her directly and try to challenge her, dive on top of her, and interact with her right away, or you need to try to minimize her effectiveness, putting her in more awkward situations to try to get value because her team is losing the fight with her outside of the fight, not doing enough to justify her pick. I would also say that oftentimes the best way to deal with a Widowmaker is a better Widowmaker, so get to grinding, boys. Now, the second winner we got to talk about is Baptiste, and I need to know who decided to make Baptiste even stronger. This character was already ridiculous, and now he just shoots beams. I think Baptiste has actually been really strong for a long time, and now he's just even stronger. He has everything that you could need to survive against any dive, being able to move and auto heal and actually immortality himself. He does a crazy amount of damage. He can heal up a frontline very quickly. There's just so much that makes this character insane right now. But if I were to give you one tip on this character, I would say make sure that you are not being too reactive with all of your abilities. I see way too many Baptiste players just instinctively trigger their aura heal ability out of nowhere, even if they just take a tiny bit of damage. And the thing that you're going to run into on Bap, the problem is that you're going to run into a situation where the enemies are on top of you, your tank is low, your support is low next to you, and there's just way too many things you have to deal with, and you kind of don't make the right decision, right? You have too many decisions, and you just have too many things to juggle. And in those environments, that's where you want to be able to rely on your powerful utility, right? You want to be able to rely on your immortality field, rely on your aura heal, rely on all these things so that you can do everything you want to do. You can heal your teammates, you can keep your tank alive, you can still shoot the thing you want to shoot. And if you're getting your pieces of utility baited out too easily with just a little bit of pressure, then you're gonna get super overwhelmed when there's a lot of things that you need to take care of and do, a lot of responsibilities in front of you, then you're gonna crumble. And number 3, the first tank we got to talk about as a winner is Orisa. We did mention Orisa previously, but Orisa is just insane right now. With a lot of the buffs that have kind of been happening behind the scenes of this character and the nerfs to other characters, Orisa has been slowly working her way up, and now she's just front and center, incredibly powerful. And with characters like Juno allowing Orisa to close the gap in, she can be aggressive in a lot of situations. Orisa is just a tank that is really good at not only shutting down enemy tanks, but just outputting crazy stats. Doesn't require a crazy amount of resources to stay alive. Oftentimes will output a ton of raw damage, and just being able to apply a ton of pressure, deny opponent tanks plays, and be a tank that doesn't require a lot of resources is enough to win games. Because if the enemy tank isn't doing anything and you're requiring less resources than the enemy team and you're just never dying, you're gonna win these games a lot. And there's a lot of situations where a tank that just doesn't require a lot from their team and can just stay alive and give their team opportunities to make plays and deny the enemy tank while they're doing it, extremely strong and really underrated overall. Now, some tips to go up against Orisa. It's important to understand that similar to how she's been in the past, Orisa is just not really the kill target. She's almost impossible to kill in most situations, especially if she has her guild or her javelin spin. Orisa is just not gonna be able to be killed. So if you're a DPS or a support, you need to look for opportunities to impact the off angles in the back line. If you're a support, find a way to help your DPS win their duel with a DPS. If you're a DPS, find a way to get an off angle on the enemy backline, the supports, the DPS. Get actual confirmed kills and don't just focus on this Orisa that just won't die. Orisa is often going to be the character that you're going to kill last or after you've already really won the team fight with huge advantage. And you need to make sure not to just do a ton of trash damage to a character that is just going to wipe it away and not care while the enemy team is harassing you and your backline. Now, number 4, this is actually a wildcard winner that I wanted to talk about. It's Genji. And Genji has actually been struggling for a long time. It's no surprise, but in this meta especially, Genji is primed to rise up. We've already seen him quite a bit in pro play, seeing some decent play right now, but in the general meta at large, Genji gets to do things that other characters can't do and is needed. So number 1, Genji is actually pretty good against Orisa, doesn't really care that much about her damage, gets good value out of deflect, being able to deflect potentially javelin, and just gets to play outside of Orisa's range, spam at Orisa or ignore Orisa, and Orisa can't really do that much against a Genji, so that's good overall. In addition to that, Genji is like one of the best Widowmaker threats now in the DPS category because Sombra is not as good at doing that anymore, and Genji being able to challenge a Widowmaker on the high ground directly is really, really good, and just generally being able to chase around a lot of characters with mobility is great right now, whether Ashe is seeing a lot of play, whether it's a character like Juno or Ana or Kiriko. Genji is reasonably good against a lot of these characters, so while your Blade is still gonna probably not get a lot of value, to be honest with you, the neutral game of Genji is actually pretty good right now, but you're really gonna have to pick your spots to go in with Genji. The mark of a great Genji is really just being patient and picking the right engagements and not just trying to do everything all at once. You don't want to be someone that just makes a million decisions. You want to make a couple of the right ones often. At number 5 on the list, we got to talk about Kiriko, and I think a lot of people have moved away from Kiriko, but they shouldn't be. They're sleeping heavily on Kiriko, and I really do think because of Juno, because of other supports being super strong, people are kind of flocking away from Kiriko because there's so many other goodies to play. But Kiriko's still insane and does a lot of really great things right now in the meta. A character that can jump past with her team, jump past an Orisa and go in on the back line. A character that can flank and be, you know, proactive and deny characters, even characters like Widow, and shut them down. And even characters like Ana and Ashe, when they're scoped in, there's easy shots to be hit with a Kiriko. Her ultimate, Kitsune Rush, is still one of the most powerful ultimates in the entire game. And Suzu is still great. When there's characters like Junker Queen and Ana running around, being able to deny with Suzu is fantastic. But most importantly of all, in a meta where the front line is very, very difficult to interact with, Kiriko being able to go on an off angle, teleport, help her DPS win that off angle duel, and then go pressure, go dive in with the team, or just never be, you know, pushed up on or denied by an Orisa. She's just never gonna die to an Orisa. These are all really fantastic things that Kiriko gets to do that I can't overstate enough. So yeah, definitely if you want to climb this season, I really think that Kiriko is one of the best characters you could play, really. Now, speaking of Junker Queen, number 6 is actually Queen. And you might be surprised that I'm putting Queen here because Orisa is a character that sees a lot of play and the matchup can be difficult. And I do think that Junker Queen can struggle up against Orisa, but there's a couple of things that make Junker Queen really strong. Number 1, Junker Queen can synergize with dive characters, and I think that's where she thrives the best right now, alongside characters like Genji and Tracer, enabling them to go in. this is where Junker Queen really starts to shine, enabling that with the shout, creating a lot of value, and then also just having dive characters to follow up with your ultimate means it's almost always going to be a wipe. These are all fantastic. With less Kiriko seeing play, Junker Queen's ult becomes insanely strong, one of the best tank ults in the game by a large margin, and really, it's also the character that I think you can smurf with the hardest. If you are the better tank in the game, Junker Queen is going to show that very, very quickly. You're going to be able to completely outplay them, their front line, their back line, and you could be a damn raid boss. Junker Queen can take over games completely, and is one of my best suggestions if you are underneath the diamond rank and want to climb to diamond as a tank as quickly as possible. Junker Queen is like my #1 suggestion, because I really do think that you can hard carry teams completely with this character by learning the right timings with your shout and swings, engaging properly, getting great ultimates. These are so important on this character, and this character has the power to really hard carry. Now, number 7, we do got to talk about Ashe. Ashe is still the best DPS in my personal opinion. She just doesn't really have any weaknesses, with one exception, and that's Widowmaker. But it's going to be a little bit map specific, because Ashe actually can beat Widowmakers in a lot of situations, but it's going to depend on the length of the sight lines. On some of the really long sniper maps, yeah, Widowmaker is definitely going to thrive, but in general, Ashe is going to be far more consistent of a pick. And I think every Ashe player should also know how to play Widow, have Widow in your back pocket for those moments when you need a Widow diff, for those moments where Widow's really good. But Ashe is just really versatile, capable of denying dive characters, capable of putting a lot of pressure on poke compositions, capable of putting a lot of pressure on supports with dynamite. And Bob is still just one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive, DPS ultimates, period, because it can win entire fights when there's a lot less characters like Ana that can shut it down too, and, you know, Sombra just not really interacting with Bob any more favorably. Ashe is great, and I cannot stress enough how much I would suggest you to learn Ashe if you are just lost, or you're a DPS player that feels like you pick this character, then you pick this character, then you pick this character, you don't know what to play. Ashe is going to feel a little bit awkward. Everyone goes through that, where Ashe feels a little bit awkward at the start, but I would suggest you stick it through. I really do think that this is the character that is just going to be the most consistently strong and meta for a very long time, has a very strong kit, and I would suggest you playing this character. It's my #1 suggestion as a DPS player in general, and it's especially super powerful when players are not working together or not synergized, so in lower elos. But yeah, Ashe is fantastic. Now, number 8, we do got to talk about Juno, which did receive some nerfs before this, so it's weird to put her in a winner's list, but I want to put her here just because Juno's still strong, and I want to make that clear. Just because this character is nerfed doesn't mean she's just all of a sudden not playable, because she's still crazy strong, and I think there's a lot of options in the support role right now. So many different strong supports. Lucio, Kiriko, Ana, Bap, Brig, freaking Morgra is damn strong. Even there's some situations where Zen is strong. There's a lot of strong supports right now, but Juno still shines above a lot of these characters because of what she can do to enable tanks to take so much aggressive space, and just add a lot of overall damage and heals to the fight. Very strong ultimate. And it's really kind of funny to me how everyone misevaluated Juno at the start. I think most people thought that Juno was a bit underpowered at the very beginning when the character was leaked and at the very first days of playing her, but now we all know just how strong being able to speed in. I mean, speed is just insane, and then being able to ranged heal on ranged DPS. Really great combination of abilities that can enable a lot of comps. And Juno and Brig is still a really strong support combo. Even though Brig also got nerfed, still also very strong. I think that duo is really great in general, one of the most powerful duos. And yeah, don't put down Juno just because she got nerfed. In fact, I think more people should start to pick her up and put her in your overall hero pool. At number 9, we gotta talk about Zarya. In response to Orisa being meta and becoming really strong, and Junker Queen being really strong strong as well. I think Zarya is really starting to shine as a little bit of a sleeper pick, being just a very consistent character that gets to basically win all of these really close range ground fights. It's kind of like the meta moves in stages, and Zarya is like the next character up that can shut down a lot of these other characters. And I would say learning Zarya, getting good with Zarya, I would highly suggest it, and I think it's a great character to have in your back pocket. That being said, something that I think is really underrated is actually enabling a couple of DPS with bubble. Namely, Venture and Reaper are great bubble targets that you should do a lot more. Even a Genji can get a lot of value with the bubble too. And on maps like Dorado, now that Zarya can actually take that high ground easier, you can take the fight directly to enemies, and I think you could actually play her on Dorado, which is cool. And she's pretty good on first and third, so now you can actually make her passable on second. Maybe you'll carry some momentum through with full charge and a grab or whatever the case may be, even if she's not perfectly optimal. But yeah, I would say that Zarya is just a really good character. And even if you don't main her, I would still suggest having Zarya in your back pocket. I could see a meta develop where Zarya becomes very, very powerful, and she's already good now. So yeah, just a great character to pick up. And number 10, we got to talk about Tracer. Just still one of the most powerful, maybe the most powerful in your mind, DPS or character in the entire game. Tracer is still phenomenal. There's so many supports that need to be one clipped. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Tracer just gets to do a little bit of everything. And the reason that Tracer is so strong is not her 1v1 capabilities necessarily, or the fact that you can just harass supports nonstop. It's that you can play positions that players cannot flush you from without forcing a fight with you that they are disadvantaged in, or you can just get away and then come right back. So as an example, you can find little pockets on points in areas where you're behind a piece of cover, but you're still creating some pressure, some value. Shooting at a tank, finding situations to apply pressure, setting up for your next engagement. Tracer's not all about, oh, I'm going to wrap to the back line, I'm going to triple blink around and shoot at a support, and then I'm going to recall. That's not the only thing Tracer can do. Tracer can also play in a room, shoot at a tank, harass certain people, build up a pulse bomb, look for moments and opportunities when people are on fire, people are antied, people are being jumped by your teammate, people are distracted. There's a million different ways that Tracer can find that gap to get that value. And unlike other characters, you know, you're playing a certain position and enemies just look at you, they do a little damage, you have to run away, and then you have to go back to your team or just completely leave. Tracer doesn't have to. Tracer gets to play where she wants to play and make plays from that location. But I will leave you with one tip, because I actually recently did a VOD review on a Tracer player that took some advice I gave in a video and I think misconstrued it a bit. So one thing I always say is that you're gonna want to save your blinks so that when you're on an enemy, you actually can blink around them, right? You don't want to engage a target with no blinks, because then if they do a little damage to you, you're gonna have to recall. And I still stand by that. But in the VOD review, I had a Tracer player that was, about, 12 feet away from Ana that was scoped in, and they didn't want to blink at the Ana because they thought that that would be a waste of a blink. So they start shooting at the Ana from 12 feet away, and they're just walking at the Ana, and then the Ana turns around and then shoots them, and then their team comes, and they end up not getting that kill, when if they would have just blinked in, closing the gap, they actually could have one-clipped that Ana that was just not paying attention to them at all, basically standing completely still, zoomed in. And it kind of got me thinking that some pieces of advice, when taken to their absolute, can become bad pieces of advice. So it's important to try to think about things in a more fluid and subjective way instead of like an absolute way. Because yes, it's true that you should save your blinks so that you can actually use them to move around and trade for damage and duel somebody. But if you can force an engagement right this second in an opportune moment, that's what mobility is for when you're trying to make an aggressive play. And that's when you should fire that blink away, close in that gap, and you're going to trade a lot more damage, and you're going to need to dodge a lot less, so you don't actually need the extra blinks. In fact, you might win the fight outright, and you don't need any. But anyways, I hope you learned something in this video. If you did, let me know in the comments down below, and smash that subscribe button so we can get to 90,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.